Is the Brian Tracy Experience. Welcome with the Brian Tracy himself. Hey,
Well,
Dad. How you doing?
thank you. And my start is always our goal is to help you to be far more successful in everything that you do by sharing some of the ideas and principles that other people have used
Yeah.
to get to the top. So,
And our job, Dad, is to help our listeners and viewers learn a little bit more about you. So we can explore your ideas about things, but I want to take a little trip back in time to January 1944 on Prince Edward Island.
Yes. Ooh, tell us.
Tell us about where you were born and where you grew up.
well, what I was told by my parents is that my father was in the Air Force during World War II, and he was stationed in Prince Edward Island, and they were monitoring the flights and the ships going to Europe. And my mother said that it was very boring in Prince Edward Island, and so they had me because they needed something to distract them from the humdrum of military life. So I was an entertainment feature. So I lived in Prince Edward Island until the end of the war. Then we moved to Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, and then they moved to California, and I grew up in California. And then we moved back to Vancouver, and from there I would and travel the world for 8 years, 84 countries, and then came back. And what more can I tell you? Just working at job after job.
Let's just say welcome to the audience. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We're seeing you all popping up. This is so exciting. Penny and Mohammed and Raluca, this is exciting. We're happy to have you.
Alejandro, Sandra, Christopher, Penny, welcome.
Yes.
And Dad, just to give you some direction, I remember one of the significant moments that we had is we went to Halifax, and
Yes.
we found the port that you shipped out of.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
And we went when I was about 19, 20 years old, I decided to go off and see the world. Now, here's an interesting thing that I discovered later is when I was growing up, I read all kinds of books and magazines about people who had adventures and gone to sea and gone to foreign wars and things like that. And if you feed that stuff into your mind when you're young, I learned later in studying psychology, it starts to guide you and direct you. So I decided to go off and see the world. And my goal, because I didn't have very much money, was to get a job on a ship and work my way across the Atlantic and begin traveling south. And then my first goal was to travel to Africa. And I sometimes joke that nobody else was going to Africa. Young people were hitchhiking and backpacking around Europe. So myself and two others decided we'd go to Africa. And we never asked why that nobody else was going to Africa. Well, once we got to Africa, we found out because there was a little stretch between Tangiers and Gibraltar called the Sahara Desert, which was 25,000 square miles of flat sand without a blade of grass, without a fly. And we had to cross the biggest single stretch, the Tenerife, which is 500 miles. And our plan was to cross the desert on bicycles, because we had this idea that nobody had ever crossed the desert on bicycles and we'd be famous. So we started off from London on bicycles, and it was the most grueling thing that ever happened to us. And we learned once we got to Gibraltar why nobody would ever cross Africa on bicycles, because we couldn't even cross Europe on bicycles. Anyway, so that was my starting point. One of the things we learned, two of my friends, Jeff and Bob, and we started in Vancouver, we set a goal to get to Johannesburg. And we didn't realize at the time, we thought, well, you just go across here, which is Canada, and you go across there, which is the Atlantic, and down here, and to Johannesburg. No big deal. We didn't realize it was 17,000 miles. 17,000 miles. And we did it in 9 months. And the story is, I've written 3 books on the story, The Desert Crossing and Many Miles to Go and so on. But one of the things that we learned is if you set a goal and you never give up, you will very likely achieve that goal. And one of the things that we teach, and Michael and I were giving a seminar in Los Angeles yesterday, is that everybody's goal who's watching this is to become a self-made millionaire, to become financially independent, to have enough money so that you never worry about money again. And that's what we teach. We've managed to achieve it ourselves, and we teach other people how they can achieve it. And surprisingly enough, it's not that complicated. When you meet,
one of the, Dad, just to interrupt, sorry. One of the great metaphors that you had is the black barrels in the desert.
Yes, one barrel.
Can you just elaborate on that a little bit, because I think our listeners and our viewers really appreciate it.
Yeah.
By the time we left Gibraltar, we had an old Land Rover, and without the Land Rover, we would have died. And but we had all kinds of problems. And then finally, we began our 500-mile crossing, desert crossing, and you could never get lost traveling across the Sahara during the day, because the French, when they ran Algeria, had put 55-gallon black oil drums every 5 kilometers. And every 5 kilometers was the curve of the earth. So that when you arrived at one black barrel, you could see the next one, and the one behind you fell off the edge of the earth. So you could always see 2 oil barrels. You could cross the greatest desert in the world just by going 1 oil barrel at a time. And I've taught that story to hundreds of thousands of people, and they come back and say it was one of the most important lessons. You don't have to accomplish everything. You just have to do it one step at a time, 1 oil barrel at a time, 1 sales call at a time. You have to read 1 book at a time. And if you'll do that, you can cross the biggest desert in your life. If it's from poverty to riches, you can do it 1 oil barrel at a time.
The imagery that I've heard you use in the past is that as 1 oil barrel is disappearing behind you,
yes,
the other one emerges on the horizon.
Pops up on the horizon, yes. You can always see 2 oil barrels. You can always see the next step. And this is really important. Don't try to conquer the world. Just take the next step. And then the next step, the next step. And you can achieve any goal in life 1 step at a time.
Well, Dad, and I would also say, sorry, Michael, that sometimes it's just a matter of figuring out where the first oil barrel is, right?
Yes.
You can set your goal, you can have a plan, but the hardest part is taking the first step or taking action. And so as soon as we can identify even that small step towards that oil barrel, or just 1 baby step of action, starts the momentum, and then you work towards your goal. And so
the thing that changed my life was the discovery of gold.
Yes.
And the first oil barrel, the first step, is you take a spiral notebook. I always have them. I carry them. This is the one I'm writing in now. It's a huge one. It comes from Amazon. And what you do is you write down your goal in the present tense, and then you write down 20 things that you can think of to do to achieve your most important goal. That's the starting point. Now, here's an important point. And I just read this fabulous article in the Epic Times of Los Angeles, and it was all the research that's been done on writing goals as opposed to typing them. And it's from study after study, national and international. It says the same thing that I learned many years ago, is that when you write down a goal, you actually program it into your subconscious and superconscious minds that then work 24 hours to bring you the goal. And people don't understand that. Harvard did a study of graduates, Harvard graduates. These are some of the most privileged, wealthiest, smartest people in the world. And they found that only 3% had written goals.
Mm-hmm.
And they pulled them up. 10 years later, they found that the people with written goals when they left Harvard were earned on average 10 times the amount that people without goals were earning. And I've explained this. I have people come up to me on the street, and it's my favorite statement. They say, "You changed my life. You made me rich. You changed my life. You made me rich." I have rooms full of people. People fly into San Diego just to take photographs with me. And then they say, "You changed my life." Say, well, what is it?
Just an aside, we have a lot of people joining us, and we're going to answer your questions if you put them in the comments. But we've been joined by Tamika Lazan, our good friend Eric Swanson, who's also a fabulous speaker. No drama, serve others. Eric, I love your motto. We have Sky and Bob and Emmanuel. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please put your questions in the comments. We're going to wrap this show up by answering as many questions as we can. So please contribute, and we'll address things in real time.
Yeah.
Dad, your goal setting strategy and method has been taught to over, I think, 5 million people.
Yes.
It's one of those time tested things, and if you're not familiar with it, Brian's got a wonderful book called Goals.
Yep.
It elaborates on that process extensively, and it's just been revised. So I'm plugging your book, Dad.
Thank you. I'll show you it. The book is right over there.
So Dad, you've had a lot of odd jobs.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
It's interesting. I have to tell you a couple of things. But the first job that I got when I was in high school, I began paying my own bills from the time I was 10 years old. When I was in high school, my first job was washing dishes. And I would wash dishes until 11 or 12 o'clock at night in the back of the restaurant in a small motel. And I would get out of work and I'd race down there. I had an old car. I'd race down to the hotel and I'd check in by 4 o'clock and I'd just work 8 hours. And so I washed dishes. I used to joke that my biggest promotion was to pots and pans. And I went from, this is true. I went from $1.12 to $1.14 an hour. And I thought, boy, I had conquered the world. I was $1.14 an hour. When I lost that job, I got a job washing cars in a car lot. And then when I lost that job, I got a job washing floors with the janitorial services. I used to joke and say, I thought washing was in my future, but it was a downhill trend. But the thing is that, and you and I have all, Barbara is right next to me, the most important thing for success is to love to work. Love to work. Napoleon Hill says, if you find something that you love to do, you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah.
So your job is to keep working until you find something you love. And when you find something you love, you'd be amazed at how much better you get at it, how much more you earn, how much greater influence you have. But that's your big job in life, is to work hard and then eventually find something that you love. And by the way, they say you have to kiss a lot of horny toads before you meet the handsome prince. That means that you have to try a lot of jobs before you find the one that's just right for you.
Yeah.
Weren't you also a logger, though, in Canada?
Yes. Well, after I finished at high school, I didn't graduate. I went up country in British Columbia, and I got a job on a logging crew with a chainsaw. And I was what is called, they called it a, I'm thinking, the name will come to me. But what you do is you follow the logging crews who are cutting down the trees. And yes, I was a slasher. And you use a chainsaw, slash all the bush to bring it down low so it won't be a fire hazard. So I did that for 3 months in the summertime, and a very interesting experience. A chainsaw is heavy, so you carry this chainsaw and you cut all day long. And then I lived in a little boarding house, and the truck would come and pick us up at 6 or 7 in the morning, take us out to the mountains. We'd work in the logging all day and then come back. And so that's another experience. And then I went north and I dug wells. Digging wells, I sort of joke about digging wells. When you dig a well, you dig until you find water. And once you find water, they fire you. So it's a very bad incentive system. So when you succeed, you fail because you do your job, and you just go from farm or ranch or to ranch, looking for a job digging wells. And if you have some experience, they hire you and they pay you $1.15 an hour, $1.25 an hour, and you sleep in the barn and with the farmers. When I was 23, I was working on the harvest and sleeping on the hay in the farmer's barn, eating with the farmer's family, and then going out all day long to bring in the harvest before the first frost. And very interesting. Again, it's a very short-term job because with the first frost, you have the crop in and they fire you again. So you have a life of being hired and fired and hired and fired.
So, Dad, we have a good question that it's a good transition point. The question is, who were some of the most impactful mentors that you had as a young person, as a young man?
Well, the mentors I had were people that I read about. My first book was Think and Grow Rich. And my first book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it's interesting, one of the biggest publishers in the world, Penguin Random House, called me last year and asked me if I would write a foreword to their new version of Think and Grow Rich. And they paid me a lot of money. And I said yes. Whenever somebody offers me money or thrusts $1,000 bills in my hand, I say yes. And
one of the most influential books that you read as a young man, you've now had the opportunity to write.
And they came to me and they said, we have concluded that you, because of my success in speaking and writing and so on, you would be the perfect choice to write the prelude to this book. And so I did. And it was a real honor to have cut your teeth on this book many years before, and then coming back and writing the prelude. So you just keep moving forward. You keep taking advantage of every opportunity that you can. You work hard. I say you start early, work harder, stay later, and just keep hammering away. And eventually you break through. And when you talk to successful people, they say the same story. I found something that was good. I worked really hard. I became really good at it. I got paid well. I got promoted. I got hired to new jobs. So it's predictable. And you guys, I'm so proud of you, Christina and Michael. I've done the same thing. You've learned your skills. You worked hard, and you've become successful. That's really wonderful.
What about in-person mentors, like people you met? And they don't have to be like long-term, but maybe they taught you something at a key point in your progress in your formative years. Was there anyone in person that did that?
Well, I had this experience. I moved from Vancouver to Edmonton, 800 miles, and Edmonton was booming at the time. Oil boom, all of Alberta was doing well. And so I moved there by myself. I took all my stuff in my car and I got a little apartment and rented some furniture. And people were talking about making money developing real estate. I didn't know anything about real estate development. So I did what other people do. I went to the library, and this is where before email and anything else. This is like 1975, 76. So I went to the library and I checked out every book I could find written by real estate developers. And you know what? They tell you what to do. Do this, number one, number two, number three. How do you look? How do you find a piece of real estate? How do you find a piece of property? One of the most important pieces of properties in the city are on the go home side of the street. Why? Is because when people are going to work, they don't buy anything. But on the way home, they stop. Little things like that. So then I found a piece of property way outside of town in a small town, and it was a perfect piece of property for a shopping center. So I put together a complete shopping center deal. I asked for advice from everyone. I put together blueprints. I had an architect speculate with me, a builder give me the costs, and now I had this, but I had to close the sale. And to close the sale, I needed something like $1 million, and I didn't have any money. So I just went. I went to the lawyer for this couple who owned the property, and the lawyer said, "I'll give you 30 days to come up with the money." And I said, but he said, "You have to give me a deposit." I said, "Well, I'll give you a deposit of $150, but please don't cash the check because there's nothing there." He said, "Brian, I still remember this man." He said, "Brian, I think you can do it. So I'll hold the check and I won't tell anybody that I didn't cash it." And so then I went out and I just scrambled. I went to every single developer within 1,000 miles. And I finally found someone not far away from where I was living in my little apartment. And they looked at my deal and they checked it all out. And they said, "This is the most perfect closing we've ever seen. We will put up all the money in exchange for 75% of the shopping center." And they did. And I developed the shopping center. I leased it out completely. And when we opened the shopping center, it was 100% leased. And I sold them the entire shopping center. And I got 25% of the money. And I was rich. I had money. It was amazing. And then the owner of this company, a man named Dr. Charles Allard, who owned about 200 companies and was just almost a billionaire, one of the fourth richest man in Canada. He was the owner of all the companies. And he came to me on the side and he said, "Brian, how would you like to come work for me?" Well, I had no idea. But I said, "Well, could I think about it?" And I went to work for him after the shopping center was open and full. And I learned from him. I worked for him for almost 2 years. And Dr. Charles Allard was one of the most wonderful, smartest men I ever met in my life. I keep meaning to write a book called The Doc and Me. He was a neurosurgeon and head of surgery for a major hospital, but he was an entrepreneurial genius. And so what he would do, it's like throwing a stick for a dog. He would say, "Go and do this." And I'd run off and I'd do it and come back. And then he'd say, "Now change this, do more of this, less of that." And then he'd throw another stick. And I worked for him and he just kept giving me jobs to do, bigger and bigger jobs. By the time a year had passed, I was in charge of $25 million worth of businesses, 3 businesses. I'd been promoted from a little office at the very back of his building to the biggest office in his entire empire except for his. And I had 35 staff and we were generating money and I made him millions of dollars. And
Dad,
then,
sorry. You ever been back to that shopping center?
Yes.
You have.
The shopping center was the kickoff. But people ask me now, this is a really important point. In the movie Patton, there's this scene where Patton is directing the battle against the German troops that is supposedly being run by Rommel. And great movie, 8 Academy Awards and so on. And the German troops are pulling back, and he's watching this victory. And he says, "Rommel, I've read your book. I've read your book." And Rommel had written a book called The Tank in Warfare. And when I went to Edmonton, I thought, how do I become successful in real estate development? And people say, how could you develop $1 million shopping center with no money? No. I say, I read the book. I read the books. And it's a most wonderful thing. Anybody can accomplish almost any goal if you just study and take notes and then go out and practice.
Okay, so we meet people all the time, and there's kind of two. I guess there was this pivotal moment in your career. And so you were only an audio author, right? You had audio books, but you hadn't written a book yet.
Right.
And so you were one of the best-selling audio authors, and then you became a real, you started writing several books. Let's talk about that transition. Like what was the transition point between audio author to written author?
Well, I began speaking, and my first seminar was a personal development seminar called the Phoenix Seminar, the Psychology of Achievement. And we had a recession, and people said, well, it's a wonderful seminar. It's highly motivational. It is still the best personal success seminar in the world in 39 languages. But he said, what we need is sales. We need sales. We need sales. We've got to make more sales. We've got to make more money. And I said, well, I know a lot about sales because I've been in sales for 20 years. So I designed a program called the Psychology of Selling. And it took off. I could tell you stories that bring tears to your eyes. Small companies, large companies, hundreds, thousands of people attended the seminar and went out and literally doubled and tripled their sales income. Companies just went from struggling to financial success. And as I became better known, I was approached by a literary agent, and she said, I work with all the big publishers. Could I represent you to write a book? And she did. That's how it works, by the way, in the modern world. You need an agent. If you try to go to a publisher by yourself, they ignore you. You can't get in the door. So she was a very successful agent. Her name was Margaret McBride. She lives in San Diego. And she took me to one of the biggest publishers in the world. We did a 3-book deal. The books were successful. And then another publisher said, would you write a book for us? And then another publisher said, would you write a book for us? So I said, yes. Okay. And one after another, I now have published my 96th book, 96 books in 55 languages in almost every country in the world. And now I go overseas to do seminars. 500,000, 2,000 people come out to hear me speak in Uzbekistan or in Vladivostok or in Africa or South America. So it all came from the speaking. And the speaking came from incredible work to develop the seminars and put them together. And then I turned those into books and tapes and courses and videos and all kinds of good stuff.
And isn't one of your goals right now, Dad, to get to 100 books?
Yes.
Yes.
And
we're trying to convince you to write your autobiography. So maybe since we have this platform, if you guys are interested in an autobiography by Brian Tracy, please let us know because we're really trying to get him to do that.
Okay. Well, yeah. I have contracts, and the contract is like gold. I have contracts for publishers for 3 or 4 more books. So I just have to get the time, and I'll write the 101 books, and then I'll write my.
Is that a promise? When we were kids, we used to make a deal with our dad, and if he made a promise, there was a promise, and then there was a daddy promise. If he made a daddy promise, it was like there was no going back.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's nice that you say that.
Dad, you have a manuscript that's quite long about your early days, right? Is it called, like 1969 or something? I saw it on your desk and I read a little bit of it. Can you talk about that?
No, well, what I did is I wrote the equivalent of 3 books on my 17,000-mile journey, and then I put a spin in the books, and I would say, and at this point I learned this. So each of the books, which travels first of all, from Vancouver to across the Sahara, and then all halfway through across Africa, and then the rest of the way all the way to Johannesburg, where we were almost killed several times. And it's very interesting. So what I have is 3 books. The Success is a Journey, or I call them the Many Miles to Go, 1, 2, 3. And what I infuse in these books is the lessons that I learned later, all the lessons I learned about business and success and relationships and personal management and things like that. But if you,
what if it was just the story, and just, if everyone that's listening and viewing this, would you guys want to just get the whole story without the asides and without the lesson?
Well, you have to make
that'd be of interest to anyone. We'll take an informal poll in the comments, because I know Christina and I both love hearing your stories.
Yes,
and I know you're tuned up to always want to deliver so much value in the term of lessons, but lessons can be gleaned from stories without the aside.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, just a quick aside, behind this podcast is our dear friend Lanny Morton, who is a genius at AI. And when I first began writing the book, you almost have to start off with a handwritten, and then I decided to learn how to type. So I learned how to touch type, and then I found a professional secretary who could dictate it, so I could record it and he would dictate. But now with AI, you can write a book in your own voice, in your own material, far faster than it's ever been possible before. So if you give me a little bit of urging, then I promise you.
We can always throw the link in the comments, Dad. We don't have to. But AI is changing everything very quickly. That's for sure. It's moving so fast that I don't think there's any one person that really has a full grasp on what it's capable of.
Yes, but when the internet was invented, people had to adjust to the internet because it was such a radical change in communication, and then later they had sales and everything that you could buy on the internet, and now we have AI, which is one of the greatest leap forwards in communication history. So I just say one point is that everybody has to learn AI, just like you learn how to drive a car or ride a bicycle or type the keyboard. You have to learn AI, and it will help you, save you time. It's the most amazing thing. So that I won't beat this up.
I think it's interesting because I've been reflecting on this, and my biggest issue is I forget to use it when I should use it, and I kind of go back to the old way of typing something up. And so I have this sticky on my monitor, and it just says use AI to remind me to not go back to the kind of the old way, because the old way takes hours and days, and AI takes minutes, and you can get something that's 90% ready and just make some small adjustments and edits, and you're off to the races. So
it's astonishing. You can have anything. How can I lose 5 pounds in the next 15 days? And AI will give you a diet, a specific course of action, and show you how change your. It's the most amazing thing, and you can get the answer in about 30 seconds.
Oh, easily, yeah. And so you can actually input ingredients into AI and say, "Can you create, a 7-day meal plan based on the ingredients I have on hand?" And then it'll give you recipes, and there's so many things. There's so many things. It's just like it's endless. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah. So the most important thing for me is always time, and time. Anything that I can do to save time and maintain the same level of quality, I will do. And what AI does is it saves you an enormous amount of time learning and finding out this kind of information. And it's what you could do is astonishing. Christina and I wrote a book together with Barbara mean, Christina and me, and her voice and my voice, and we put out 12 chapters with sections for her, sections for I, and the whole thing was done in less than 60 minutes. It's phenomenal. Now you go back and you fill it in and you polish it and things like that. People say, how can you write a book so fast? It's now AI, and you can do it.
Yeah, one of the things that you taught me is the wind wiper method for doing professional speaking. Windshield. Yeah. Back and forth. It's a story, emotive, content. Story, emotion, content. And
Yes.
one of the things I use AI for is I'll have the content and I'll be like, how do I translate the content into some meaningful anecdote or story or example? And I just plug it into AI and I go, can you give me a meaningful anecdote, story, or example for this? And it's like, here's 25 things, and I can plug it in, and it helps me do the windshield wiper method. I can create a very elaborate, engaging talk with utilizing the resource. It's just there's so many things, and that's why this is my reminder. It's like you need everything.
And the more you use it, the better you get. Our friend Lenny Morton, who's a genius on AI, has developed 30 questions. And you answer the 30 questions from your own experience, and then it records all the questions, and you push a button that writes the book based on your answers to your questions. So let us say you wanted to write a book on selling. Well, it asks you 30 questions, and you answer the 30 questions with regard to your sales experience and what's been important to you and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And it just pumps out the book. And you have to polish it. This is very important. Let me give you a wonderful example. When I lived in Johannesburg is the diamond center of the world. And so they have a lot of diamonds being mined in South Africa, but also they have diamond polishers. Now, a diamond polisher, one of my good friends was a diamond polisher, is what they do is they take the diamond, whatever, and they polish it. And a diamond has 54 facets, 54 facets. And every one of them has to be polished so it fits perfectly with each other facet. It's the most amazing thing. And then a stone is now worth hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So it's the same thing in life. In life, there are many different facets, maybe not 54, but there's many different facets that you have to polish to have a good life. You have to learn this and you have to practice that.
So, hey, Dad, we got a really interesting question. So the question is from Sky Waldorf. And the question is, if you had to rebuild your success from scratch in today's digital and fast-paced world with only your mindset and no connections, what would be your first 3 strategic moves?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. In order to be successful, you have to serve other people. And the more and better you serve them, the more they will pay you, and they will happily pay you. So the very best thing you can do if you're starting with nothing is to sell something to somebody, a service, a product, something, but find a way to serve people and reward them so that they pay you more than the cost of the service. You make a profit and you make money. I'm 81 years old now and in great shape, by the way. And if I had lost everything today, I'd go out and start selling. I'd find something to sell. I'd sell real estate. I'd sell investments. I'd sell life insurance. I'd sell anything. Because why? It's because when you sell something, you enrich and improve the life of another person. So that's what I would do. Is I'd immediately think, how can I serve other people and make a living? And at the beginning, you may not earn very much, but you better get started. And that's what I would do. And always think, if you want to become wealthy, which you do, then what you have to do is you have to serve other people. Earl Nightingale had a wonderful line, which is worth the price of admission. And he said, every morning you get up and say, how can I increase the value of my service to my customers today. If you work for a company, then Peter Drucker said the most important word in business is the word results. And so you always ask, what results are expected of me? Of all the results that are expected of me, what is the most important result I can contribute to my company? And then when you start in the morning, you start on that and you work non-stop. Put your head down. 50% of working time today is wasted in idle chit chat with coworkers. That's not for you. What you do is you pick the most important result and you start on that and you just work nonstop until it's 100% complete. Here's another really important point is that all success comes from task completion. It doesn't come from task working on, task piddling away with, task running at. It comes from completing things. So if you develop the reputation as a person who completes your tasks, you will get more and more tasks to complete, and they'll be bigger and bigger, and they'll pay you more and more. Task completion, task completion. And then you ask, what task would be the most valuable and important for me to complete? And start with that and work on it nonstop. Don't talk to your friends. Don't go for lunch. Don't waste time. Just work nonstop on your most important task. And that's the secret to success. That's the secret.
We have another question from Idonjaset Peter. What is the biggest challenge to create a positive self-concept?
The simplest term, and Barbara and I, and Barbara's sitting right next to me. Barbara and I learned this many years ago when we went to a seminar off in the mountains. And what we learned was the most powerful words are the words, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And people, thousands of people have written to me and told me that just repeating those words. And then they say instead of I like myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. If you just repeat it over and over again, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and then it locks in. And when it locks in, your self-concept changes. You become a positive person, a happy person. Now, how do you speed up this process? You help other people to like themselves by telling other people how good they are, and telling other people how much you like them and admire them, and members of your family how much you love them. Because the more you give that message, the more people like themselves and love themselves and believe in themselves. That's the key to self-concept, is how much do you like yourself. And you can increase the amount you like yourself by just saying those magic words. I like myself, I like myself, I like myself.
Okay, another question. This is from Waluka. I'm goal-oriented. Do you have any advice for encouraging my girlfriend to plan goals with me?
Well, what you do is you help her become clear about what it is she really, really, really wants. Now, one of the things I do in my seminars is I ask people, imagine you could wave a magic wand and you would be guaranteed of success in any one goal in life. What one goal would you choose? Now, as soon as you ask that question, I call it, it's like a face slap. People go, geez. And just imagine you were guaranteed. Imagine a millionaire said, you pick the goal and I'll make sure that you get it. Well, what would it be? And write it down, write it down, write it down, write it down. Then the second question is, what one skill would help you the most to achieve your most important goal? Those two questions transformed my life when I was a young person. And I went from basically sleeping on the floor and broke. In one period of time, I lost about 20 pounds. I lost 20 pounds because I couldn't afford to eat. So I was.
It was the warm tomatoes.
Warm tomatoes.
I'd like to add something to Waluku's question.
So those are the two questions.
Yeah, I'm going to add something to Waluku's question. So It is often really hard for people to set goals, or they struggle to know what they want. But in relationships, you can make relationship goals. So the two of you are doing it together. So it's not necessarily an individual experience, but sort of, like, what kind of relationship do we want to have? What kind of trips do we want to take? What does our family look like? Do we want to have kids? Like, these are goals that you set as a couple. And if you start out doing that, it sometimes makes it easier to break off and have individual goals. And then you can support each other on your different goals. So, just make them more fun. Start with like, hey, as a couple, what's a goal for travel? What's a goal for something we want for our home or our family? And then break it into more, personal and professional development goals as individuals.
And start with small goals. Don't set massive goals to live in a palace in the mountains when you're just starting off. Is start with small goals that you both want to achieve. And remember, there's two types of goals. There's goals that you want to achieve, end goals, and there's goals that you have to accomplish in order to achieve them. For example, you may have to learn a skill. You may have to get a better job. You may have to move to a different city. These are we call them interim goals that you need to put yourself in position to achieve really important goals. And by the way, I see my friend Eric Swanson is on the comments. And Eric Swanson is a wonderful speaker. He's an author. He's just an absolutely super guy. So I want to shout out to you, Eric. Thank you for being with us today.
No drama, serve others, Eric. That's his motto.
Yeah.
Hey, we have a question from Instagram from Andrea D. Sometimes I feel I'm stuck at certain points. How can I keep making progress without seeing results? How do you stay motivated when you're not seeing progress, Dad?
Well, here's an exercise, and it's so powerful. It should be illegal. I just taught it to a group of potential millionaires yesterday. Michael and I were there in Los Angeles. And it's very simple. You take a spiral notebook. Where is my spiral notebook here? Said use one behind me.
You just had it.
Anyway, it's a spiral notebook. And what you do is you write down 10 goals that you would like to achieve in the next year or so. And the next morning, you turn the page without looking back and write down your 10 goals again. Do this every day for 30 days. And you know what will happen? Your life will transform. It'll be almost like you push down a dynamite detonator. Your whole life will explode. You will double and triple your income. I know, because I've taught more than 1,000 people this process, and they all doubled their income within 30 days. Many of them tripled their income. Just write down your goals. And I have to show you a one.
Hi, Mom.
No.
Hi.
Hey, Mom.
Hi. That's great. I'm having so much fun.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I had a group of my students here on Saturday, and I gave them each one of these, and I had them open it to the first page and write down 10 goals. And I had them commit to writing down 10 goals every day for 30 days. It takes approximately, according to psychologists, about 33 days for you to lock in a new habit for life. Now, I had a woman come to visit me earlier this month, last month, and she came from Ukraine, and she wanted to interview me and take photographs with me and tell me her story. And her story was very simple. She said that she was struggling, and as you know, Ukraine is war-torn today. She was earning $500 a month, and she was working hard. She began to write down her 10 goals. And she got it from my book Goals. This is the book. This is the book that will change your life. By the way, I'm not trying to sell books because I get a nickel a book, so I don't make any money from books, but this is the best book on goal setting ever written. Anyway, she said she started writing down her 10 goals every day. 3 years later, she was earning $500,000 a month. $500,000 a month. And my agent who had arranged for the conversation said it's true. She's one of the most successful people in Europe. She's got thousands of followers. She's earning so much money. She's literally a millionaire or a millionairess. She's happily married. She has 2 children. Happy husband. Nice life. She said to me, Brian, it was this exercise. It was so powerful. So please do it. Please get a spiral notebook and join the top 3%. Join the top 3% who do it. The great majority of people always have an excuse. They have a disease called excusitis, which is invariably precedes failure. Excusitis leads to failure. So if you're going to do it, write down your 10 goals and we'll see what you're made of. And Eric Swanson will tell you because he does that. And my good friends do that. My good friends listen to me and do what I tell them. Write down your 10 goals every day. By the way, I used to guarantee that if you come to my seminar, that I guarantee that you would double your income and double your time off. And every person who followed this exercise doubled and tripled their income within 30 days.
The double guarantee.
The double guarantee.
So, Dad, we have there's a question from Facebook from Beth Menzies, and she asked what the most important lesson is for kids. I'm going to take a stab at this because this is a question Christina and I get all the time. You know, what was it like growing up with Brian? One of the things that I usually elaborate on is that when you wanted to teach us something, you would radically change our environment, right? So to teach, when you taught me how to swim, you'd gently throw me in the pool. But I think the pool is a great metaphor for radically changing your environment because you don't know how to swim and you get thrown into a body of water. You're contorting and stretching, you're flopping around, like you're making all these iterative movements to try to figure out how to keep your head above water until you make it to the edge or the stairs. But the same thing with like riding a bike or when you encouraged me to get into direct sales, and then when I said, hey Dad, I'm going to be a speaker, and you said, oh well, why don't you come to this event and I'll introduce you to the promoter and maybe he'll book you for an engagement. And then 20 minutes before the first break, you said, and I've got great news. My son Michael is here in the audience, and he's going to come up and speak to all of you for 20 minutes. And so throughout my formative years, you've always radically changed my environment to help me learn faster. And I'm sure Christina can probably elaborate on something that she's learned.
There's no fear. I remember the first time you and I did we did a live stream or a live podcast or something to talk about a book we had written. And we got there and I said, Dad, okay, do we have questions we're going to answer? I mean, this was my first time ever being on any kind of video, anything. And I'm like, what are the questions? Let's prepare for this. And you were like, no, it's better if it's spontaneous. Let's just roll and start and we'll just see how it goes. And it was terrifying, but ended up, actually being an easier situation to not overthink it. And so I guess sometimes ripping off the Band-Aid is helpful, even though at first it feels quite terrifying.
Yeah, but the thing is that you had the confidence of always being told how good you are. So you may have been uneasy because it was a brand new thing, but you knew inside, and whenever you were put up in front of an audience, you just spoke beautifully. And Michael did a great job. He got standing ovation from his first talk. And the next time we were doing a seminar,
it was a very receptive audience.
Well, that was a pretty hard place to be put, Michael. And 20 minutes, go. I mean,
yeah, that's when you realize that your physiology is different than your mindset.
Yes,
it's totally different.
Everybody watching this, remember, has unlimited potential. This is one of the most important lessons you ever learn, is that your potential is limited only by your own beliefs. And so when you say, I like myself, there's 3 statements that you can use to double your performance and your effectiveness and your income. Statement number 1 is, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do anything I put my mind to. Statement number 2 is, I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. And the third statement is, I am unstoppable. I am unstoppable. I am unstoppable. And if you say those 3 things over and over, it's like an oil rig drilling deeper and deeper and deeper. And at a certain point, it connects and you change your entire way of looking at the world. And you just say it all day. I can do it. I never give up. I am unstoppable. And you guys are, I'm happy to say, all 3 of those things.
So, Dad, we have Sierra Miller on YouTube. She says, what is the exact amount of time it takes to create a habit? Some say 21, 33, 66 days. Which is it? How much time does it take to create a habit?
Well, a good friend of mine says you can sometimes develop a habit in a couple of seconds. For example, if you lean and put your hand on a hot stove, you'll develop the habit of not putting your hand on hot stoves for life. Doesn't take long. But the answer...
Mom, did you say Michael knows that one?
Remember Michael learning that one.
I remember. We're referring to a time when Michael was told not to touch the stove, and he kept...
And I did anyway,
and he's developed the habit of never touching on stove.
Yeah, well, it works. Yeah, it's true. I developed that habit instantly. So
the reason I say write your goals every day for 30 days is that in almost 100% of cases, it will become a habit for life. I learned this little technique when I was in my 20 and just starting off, and I thought, well, I'll give it a try. I'll just give it a try. And that's what I say to my audiences when people say, well, what about this and what about that? And how can we be sure? I say, why don't you give it a try?
Dad, so Eric has got a really cool story. It's Eric Swanson, no drama, serve others, a great speaker and a friend of ours. He writes, I remember the very first time I spoke in front of a huge audience. It was when Brian was just coming off the stage at the Javits Center in New York City. And Brian hands me his lapel mic and looked me straight in my eyes and said, Eric, start talking now so that the audience wouldn't leave. Do you remember that, Dad?
Well, I probably do. I do everything possible to help my friends in speaking. So I'm sure I would have said that. And he did. And Eric did. And he's become an extremely good speaker and author and motivator.
Yeah, no, Eric's great. He's allowed me to share his stage multiple times, and he always attracts some of the best people in the world. So it's always a privilege and an honor to have another speaker like Eric on.
Yes.
All right, we're coming up on the hour here.
Yes.
Do you have any closing thoughts about any topic whatsoever?
I was just thinking of a quote from Shakespeare. It says the smell of the rose lingers on the hand that casts it. So whenever you say anything good or nice or positive or helpful to other people, it actually helps you as much or more than the other person. So always build up other people, always congratulate other people, always encourage other people to do things. And just as Lincoln once said, everybody likes a compliment. So when you compliment other people in your home, your family, your business, when you compliment other people, it makes them happy and it makes you happy as well.
Perfect. I think that's great. I think that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening and for all your wonderful comments. We will be doing this next week on the Brian Tracy Experience. Please add questions into the comments. We'll review all the comments and we'll take all those questions. We'll answer them on the next episode. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christina, for helping me co-host. And thank you, of course, Dad. We'll see you next week.
Show, Brian. Yes, excellent. Have a great week, everybody. Set some goals and take action.
You can do it. You can do it. You can do it.
See you all next